Let's take a break today and work on a Christmas painting together. This is meant to be beginner friendly and it's much easier than it looks. Here are the colors that you're going to need. If you don't have the exact colors, you're still going to have a great picture when you're done. Just plan on having something in a dark, medium, and light value of the colors that you see. I'm working on a UArt 600 sanded paper, which is designed for pastels, for chalk pastels. It has a tooth to it. If you don't have that, you do want some pastel paper or even a piece of fine grit sandpaper that has a little bit of a grip for the chalk pastel or soft pastel to be held by. And then pick a circle in your house. It could be a lid to a container, it could be a drinking mug or a cup, and go ahead and put 3 circles on your paper. And one of the sets should be overlapping. And then we're just going to draw a little cap on each circle. And these are going to become your ornaments for the tree. And when you finish your caps, you can put a string on there and you'll have your ornaments. So I'm just drawing 2 parallel lines going up from the circle and then a curved line mimicking the shape of the circle and then adding a little loop that the string would go through. And then for this one, I'm doing that again, 2 parallel lines, making it a little bigger, get a bit of curve, a little loop at the top, and then add a string. And I'm even going to get a ruler and add a nice straight line, which honestly I'm going to lose once we put the bristles. They're not bristles. It's not a hairbrush. What do you call them? The needles. The pine needles for the tree are going to pretty much cover up those strings, but it's fun to see them there at the beginning. Now we're going to erase the overlap. I decided to let the larger circle be closer to us and then the smaller circle to be farther back. So I just erased that overlap and used a paintbrush to knock off the eraser dust from the paper because it was kind of sticking. For this picture, we are going to do an underpainting, and I've put a color wheel here so that you can see we're actually going to do a complementary color, which is an opposite color on the color wheel. So you can see the green. The opposite of that is a reddish color, and I want the area around the ornaments to be green, like the needles of the tree, but I'm going to start that with this beautiful crimson-y, burgundy type of red. And we're going to cover the entire area around the ornaments with that color. And we're going to go over that with some rubbing alcohol on an old brush. And that's going to kind of melt that color right into the paper. It dries very quickly and just gives this beautiful glow underneath those branches that's really nice and really pretty. And you're going to see some more complementary colors as we continue, and we'll do some of those under a few of the ornaments as well. So you want to just lay in that under color and then brush this on. If you're at all concerned that you're going to mix up your coffee and your rubbing alcohol, then definitely don't put rubbing alcohol in your mug. Pick a different container. And I've just put up a little scrap of paper here because I like to color test once in a while and just see what color I have and how it's going to lay down on the paper. That alcohol is dry already, and now I'm laying in some branches and do you have to put them where I put them? No, you don't. You get to pick where they go. We're just going to put them in. I'm doing some curving shapes and giving them some movement and motion. Then that will just help the eye travel around the picture. And then I'm drawing in those needles in curvy, relaxed lines coming off each side of the branch. It's going to go through a messy, ugly stage. It's okay. Don't despair. Every painting goes through the messy middle. And so don't get frustrated. Let yourself just push through and lay in those branches and trust the process that when it's all said and done, I think you're going to have a picture that you really like. So let's just lay those in, draw them in, and we'll pick up when those are done. I've taken, that was like a dark chocolatey brownish red color, and now I'm going over it with a deep green or a deep blue, like a navy color, and just darkening and accentuating those shapes and those dimensions of the branches. And again, like I said, it doesn't have to be the exact color. You can do the colors that you would like. You just, right now, you want to focus on a very deep color, because when you're doing a chalk pastel, you're going to work in your deepest colors first, and then you're going to work from dark until light. It's opposite if you've done watercolor before. Watercolor you do in reverse, and you start with the lights and work to the darks. But with a chalk pastel, you want to go from dark to light, more or less. I'm also darkening the corners. I just wanted those to really fade to the background when the picture is all done. So I'm laying in some dark color in the corners to really draw the focus toward the ornaments. So now I've gotten more of a green color, and we're going to continue to work on those branches and just filling in all of the needles and coloring those in. So they're just long strokes. And you may notice, I wish that my hand wasn't showing so much and that you could see more of the chalk pastel. But a lot of times I actually lay the pastel on its side. And, you know, I did pastels even in college, and unfortunately my professors were not familiar with them. And so some of the techniques that I've learned from pastel painting have come much later in life. And one of the things I learned was to unwrap the papers from the pastels and break the sticks in half and use the side of the stick to paint your picture. And it really gives you a nice broad stroke and a lot of freedom of movement. You can cover a large area in a short time. You can see I'm using that blue-green and going over those pinky areas and filling in between the branches. So leave me a comment. What is your favorite ornament to hang on your tree every year? When I was younger, it was this satin string wrapped ornament that was just a round, shiny ball and a shiny bell from my aunt. And then there was another one that was a metal rocking horse with my name on it that my parents gave me for my first Christmas. It was just a little silver ornament. And those have been my favorite for years. And, you know, the kids always get so excited every year when we decorate our tree. And so this is just bringing back those happy memories for me as I'm drawing this picture. You can see a little bit, I'm hinting at it just a little bit as we're laying in the branches, that some of these branches are going to go over the ornaments just a little bit to give it some depth and three-dimensionality. It's going to be a little tricky as we paint in the circles, but I was starting to hint and play at that even at this level in stage of the painting. Now we've gotten our darks down, and now let's take and grab one of our lighter greens, either a blue green or a yellow green. You know, as you're walking around and looking at trees, they're not all the same color, and so you get to decide what color tree you want to make. But we're going to lay in some of those lights on top of the darks, leaving some of the darks peeking through in the back, because there again, that's going to give you that depth that you're looking for in your branches. Okay, we've started on the ornament now. So, if you need to pause and take a break and lay in your branches, that's fine. And then pick up when you're ready. I've decided to do an underpainting of this Grinchy green, but that ornament is not going to be green at the end. It's actually going to be red. But red and green, again, they're opposites on the color wheel. So we're playing around with those complementary colors in doing the underpainting in the opposite color. And that's just going to give it a nice glow. And if the chalk doesn't cover all of the paper, you're going to see that greenish color just peek through, and it gives the painting this really nice glow and resonance. The ornament on the bottom left is going to be a blue, and that one I'm going to stay with the blue, but I did this real pretty bright blue as the underpainting, and I really liked that color too. I didn't want to do complements for all of them. Sometimes it's just an experiment, and we get to have fun, and we get to try different things and see how they look. And that's part of the excitement of painting, is to not make an exact replica. I'm never looking to do an exact photo type realistic picture. I figure if I wanted a photo, I'd take a photo. And when I'm painting, I want my painting to look like a painting when it's done. So that to just free you up, you don't have to have it look exactly like what you're painting. The third one, I've got this orangey red, and that's like the mid-tone color. And then we're going to add the darks and the lights after we wet that down and paint it. So I've got that darker red going in. There again, trying to build some highlight and some shadow. You can see that a little bit on the blue ornament or bauble. And then we've got the same with this reddish one. And I love when you wet the chalk down, how the colors mix together. I find that just so fun and exciting to see it just start to glow and look more and more realistic and dimensional. So now the top one, I'm laying in that orangey red over the green, and you can see the little bit of the green peeking through. This time we're not going to wet it down because this is the top layer and I don't want to create mud. I want to layer the chalk. So that's part of the fun of chalk pastel is building up those layers, and that's where it's important to have the paper that has a tooth. If you don't have a tooth and you're working on a smooth paper, you find the fibers fill up very quickly and you can't build the layers the way that you want to. Once we've got that red in, I'm going to go through and do a lighter, more orangey red for the highlight area. This is more of an imaginative piece. It's more of like a memory piece for me, just picturing, all the seasons of looking at a Christmas tree throughout my life. So I'm just imagining there being some light hitting the one side of the ornament and some shadow on the other side. And we're just going to lay in the lights, the mediums, and the darks according to that, and get a little playful with the colors too. I played around with some purple for the shadowy area and some green, just because it was fun and I wanted to try it. If you notice your chalk starting to leave yuck on your picture, you can see I was examining my chalk there. It was probably getting a little dirty, picking up the green. You can just keep a baby wipe or a piece of tissue next to your area that you're painting, or even a paper towel, and just clean off your chalk once in a while, or even on the scrap paper, you can rub the chalk off, and that will help your chalks to stay clean. You can see here I've got extra dust on the paper. I'm trying so hard not to blow on the picture, which is my default method, and it's a terrible habit. You don't want to breathe in the chalk dust. Instead, if you keep the board, if you do have an easel, if you keep it tipped towards you a little bit, that helps most of the dust to fall downward. And you can see I've got aluminum foil underneath the picture. That's there as a tray to catch the chalk dust or the pastel dust. And then you can kind of tap the board and get some of the loose particles to fall. Now that we've got the shadows built up, let's go through and put some highlights on this ornament. So those are going to be some curving lines to go along where the light would hit the ornament up near the top. And you can just see I've used a pale yellow for that to just give it a nice highlight and a little bit of sparkle. And then I must want some more shading in here, so we're going to go back through and add some more. You know, and it's like a dance. It's one step in and then another one steps in, and they just play back and forth between the light and the shadow and the mid-tones where necessary. I'm also having to go through and correct some of the roundness of the ornaments, and I'm using a nice dark green for that, and just pulling and pushing the shadows and the highlights in the greenery around the ornaments and trying to keep them looking round and the shape that they should be, because as you're painting sometimes you can lose those edges a little bit. It can be tempting with chalk pastels or soft pastels, as sometimes they should be called, to use your fingers and over blend. And I want to caution you against that. While you can blend a little bit, and you'll see me do it, try not to blend too much. Try to let the pastels do that work and let some of the edges be a little bit coarse and rough, and let your eye blend from a distance. Right now I'm going through and we're going to make the top of the ornament, the little gold piece that they hang from. And I'm using some purple for the shadows, and then like an orangey yellow for the gold and a pale yellow for the highlight. And I apologize that the screen is a little bit blurry here, and I'm hoping that will clear up soon. Now we're going to work on the bottom left ornament. I'm laying in some blue here. It's a little bit darker than the underpainting. That's going to give us that shadowy area. And then even some navy to tuck underneath what's right now the red ornament. There again to just make it look a little bit shaded, like it's sitting behind the ornament. It's tucked back into the branches a little bit. And then using the mid-tone to blend into the darker tone. And then we'll pick up the highlights here in just a minute. There's the highlight, blending that in a little bit, leaving just a bit of the underpainting peeking through. And then I apologize again, I don't have the recording. My camera had stopped and I didn't realize it. If you want me to do an extra recording of just like the green part of the ornament, I could do another circle, but it works basically the same way as the other two ornaments. You're just going to lay in your dark, your medium, and your light tones. I'm leaning into the bluish green colors for this ornament, and I wanted like that real pale aqua for the highlight. I was looking for that bluish green color in this ornament. So I've got some of that recorded, but I did miss some of the recording, and I apologize for that. I also think I missed some of the branches. If you look around on the picture, I've laid in some more of the yellow greens on top of the blue greens for the highlights on the branches and the needles there. Now I'm going to fuss over the needles some more. I've got this beautiful yellow green that I'm going to go through and add some lines and texture and just really bring those bristles, I still want to call them bristles, bring those needles to life, and then grab some orange and highlight and hit the little bits of gold that the ornaments hang from. And now let's take a reddish orange and we're going to add circles in the branches. And I tried to pick a few areas where the pinky color was showing through. And then I'm using the red yellow as the base, the reddish orange as the base, and then a gold color on top of that with a little bit of the red peeking through, and then a pale yellow on top of that. And that makes it look like the glow of the Christmas lights in between the branches. You can be pretty random where you put these. I just tried to pick spots that I thought looked like good places for them to be. So they're spaced out and not in a particular pattern. It's funny how sometimes you can put patterns in things even when you're trying not to. You can see how those just start to glow as you add the gold and yellow on top of the reddish orange. And then the pale yellow on top of that. And that just brings them right to life. Now, some of those lights are going to reflect in the ornaments, so now we're going to find those reflected lights and add those in. With a little bit of orange, a little bit of yellow, some lines coming off that a bit just to show the roundness of the shape as it reflects the light. My husband's wood shop is right on the other side of the wall from where my art studio is. So if you hear sanding sounds, I think he was working on a project at the same time that I was painting and recording this video. And I'm also adding some brighter areas in the branches where the lights are glowing, since they would be lit up as well. Then going through and just darkening some of the darks. Again, just giving it more depth, more of a pop, more distinction. So just, look at your picture and evaluate. Where does it need light? Where does it need shadow? Where does it need more depth? And then add in your shading or your highlights to play up those areas. Where would more texture be valuable? Something that can be really hard is knowing when to stop. So sometimes you just got to pick a point and you're like, okay, I'm going to call this done. And it's going to be now, or now, or now. Oh, there's one more thing. I think I'm almost done, but you're not quite sure. Eventually you sign it and you hope for the best, and you always can go back and touch it up a little bit more even after you sign. But it sure feels good to pull off the tape and see those finished edges appear, until all of a sudden you look at your hands and you realize just how dirty they've gotten, and you're feeling rather cringy. But that's nothing that a date with a baby wipe won't fix. It'll peel that right off. Ta-da! Cleaner hands, Mom. The more I peel the tape off, the more this paper starts to bounce. You can tell it was cut from a roll of paper. But here's the finished product. I would love to see what you painted. And if you visit me at amymainart.com, there's actually a contact form that you could fill out and you could send me a picture. Please share.